This is another episode of Behind the Facemask with your host and lifetime Longhorn Alex Okafor. And today we have the best NFL agent in the game, David Mulugheta, and a personal friend of mine. Appreciate you coming on.
Man, happy to be here.
Yes, sir. So David, with these, we always start from the top. So what was your upbringing like? How many siblings do you have? Where are you from? What did that family dynamic look like for you?
As you know, I grew up in Dallas, Texas. So born and raised in Dallas. Both my parents were immigrants from a small country in East Africa called Eritrea. Borders Sudan, Ethiopia, in that region. So I had a pretty, I would assume, normal upbringing for a family of immigrants, right? Both my parents worked extremely hard to kind of raise myself, and I got an older brother, a younger brother, and a younger sister. So worked extremely hard. Pops worked, 6-7 days a week, multiple jobs to make sure that we were good and taken care of. So, we always had what we needed. So, that was there. Mom's was at home as much as she could be, but also worked. But had a loving family, man. We were really, really close, real close-knit family. And didn't really need for much, man.
Yeah. The part of that resonated with me was you come from an immigrant background, kind of like myself. My pops is Nigerian. So you saying pops used to constantly work, you said 6 days a week, something like that?
6-7 days, yeah.
6-7 days a week, man. I feel like that's like that immigrant mentality.
For sure.
Did he used to pound academics into you like my pops did?
Yeah, man. As you know, man. Well, for him, it was, I didn't come here and make these sacrifices for you not to take advantage of, the opportunities here in America, right? So that was super important to him. My pops didn't get past elementary, neither did my mom, from an educational standpoint, right? So for them, it was, hey, we're going to come here and make these sacrifices, do everything we can so that you guys are going to be better off than we were. So education was key. It was all about education. Lucky for me, I was small, short, and slow, so the athletics really weren't going to work no way. So education was key. And to my parents coming, again, being immigrants, the three careers that they always would pound is you got to be a lawyer, a doctor, or engineer. And like I always say, man, I was scared of blood. So the doctor's part wasn't going to work for me. So I was a numbers guy. I always was interested in numbers and for some reason, I was drawn to law as well. So for me, I always wanted to go that corporate law route, and that's kind of where I saw my future going. And when I, for undergrad, I went to the University of Texas, as you know, here in Austin, and I was in the business school, which is one of the premier school at UT, I would like to say, McComb School of Business, but graduated from there and kind of had a straight line vision of I'm going to do corporate law, do M&A work, mergers and acquisition, and that's going to kind of be my life. So that was kind of the mindset going into college.
Okay, awesome. So you attended the University of Texas and you said you went to law school. Why Texas? Why did you choose Texas? Obviously, being from Dallas, was it always the goal to get to Texas, or did you have a scholarship from there? What led you to Texas?
Yeah, Texas was the premier flagship university in the state of Texas, and it still is, right? So for me, why not Texas is really how I looked at it. Texas was the only school I applied to. My parents didn't know that, but it was I had all my eggs in the basket with University of Texas. I had a couple of friends of mine that were attending the University of Texas that are a little older than I was. My older brother went to Texas A&M. So, he kind of set that standard that he was the first person in my family to go to college. My older brother, Minab, and kind of set the standard of what we needed to do, what we needed to be. That education was paramount, not only were my parents preaching it, but the fact that my older brother was living it and attended university, Texas A&M University. And I just didn't want to go there. I don't know what it was. Maybe the rebellion in me. I was just like, I want to do something different. So I decided that UT is where I wanted to be. Only school I applied to, and prayed for the best. And ended up working out, man. I got in, and it's funny because initially, last second, talking to my high school counselors, I had switched my. When I applied to get into the, I think it was Management Information Systems, MIS, because the counselor man, everything's going toward computers, and you should really look at a profession in computers and get a degree and really understand how to use computers and so forth, which I still can't to this day. I use a paper calendar still. So for me, I was like, I'm gonna do that. It sounded good in the moment. And I got accepted into the MIS program, Management Information Systems. And then last minute again, I switched my mind. Like, nah, man, I want to go to business school. So luckily, I reapplied to change my major, and they accepted me in the business school.
Yeah, it looked like everything worked out for you.
Yeah, for sure.
You bet on yourself, and it worked out. It panned out.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So Where does sports start to come into the picture? Because you mentioned earlier that you weren't the best athlete growing up.
It was a joke. It was a joke. I'm not the best, but I was I was very skilled.
Okay, so let's talk
athletic. I was very skilled.
Well, let's talk about that. What sports did you play growing up?
Man, I played everything growing up, man.
Okay.
Baseball, basketball. Soccer. I did everything. I wrestled. I did everything growing up. Yeah, man. When I say small, I wrestled at. I was 103 pounds when I wrestled my freshman year in high school.
Okay.
So it kind of lets you know, from a size standpoint, where I stood.
Yeah.
But I always loved football, though, man. I always loved football because I grew up in the 90s with the Cowboys, right? So everybody always asks, man, where did all these delusional Cowboys fans come from? And it came from the 90s. We were America's team. And, I grew up in Dallas, man, all the parades and everything when we had Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, Deion Sanders came by for a few. I can probably name all 22 guys that started for those teams. But so I always loved and enjoyed football. It was just never a place for me in the game of football. Like I said, I kind of looked around. I was like, I don't kick the ball well, and that's probably the only place I can get on the field. So I enjoyed it. I loved the game, but I never played it. So but I always loved football.
Okay, so that's where you got your love for the game from. Yeah. So now that you're in college at UT, what kind of starts shifting your focus into, okay, I kind of want to go chase after this, agent certification? Like, where did that originate from?
That didn't come till after I graduated from undergrad, right? Yep. So I was at UT. Like I said, man, we had some guys that went to Skyline High School where I was from that were on the football team here. So I had some, relationships there, but, nothing that was really drawing me to the profession at the time. I didn't know what a sports agent was or did at the time.
Not to interrupt, but did you have any relationships with current players on the team while you were there? Like, were you close to any current players at the time?
Like, for example, Montrell Flowers was a guy that went to Skyline, right? Yep. So, and ended up here at UT. So there was a couple guys like that, Hodges Mitchell, who knew my brother, so from Skyline as well. So I had some relationships there. But as I kind of progressed through school and a couple of years in, I realized, man, I need to start making some money. I need to figure out a way to make money. So at the time, my roommate was actually Brian Carter, who played at the University of Texas. He was on the national championship team.
Okay, I recognize that name.
B. Carter, and that was my roommate. And we just started talking, and we're like, man, how can we start making some extra money? And we decided to start throwing, parties. And that's back when, as you know, UT was doing really, really well from a football standpoint. So we decided to.
And not to date yourself, but around what time were you in school? Like, was this early 2000s?
Yeah, it was early 2000s. Okay, so I came in 2000 and left in 05.
Okay, I don't want people to know that you're 50, but
nah, chill out, man. I'm afraid. I'm nowhere near 50.
I got you.
I'm a lot closer to 30 than I am 50. So we decided to start throwing parties and to start making some income. So we called them the official football after parties, right? Because we're like, man, people are always looking for somewhere to go after the games, and we had a ton of relationships. He played football. By that time, I had grown really close to Jamal Charles, who I had met, and we became really good friends. So we were deciding, like, okay, this is something that we can do, make some extra money is all we really thought about it. So we started doing it. The events grew to be really, fruitful financially for us. So we were doing that, and through that, I started developing a ton of relationships with athletes, right? All the football players would come to the parties. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but they'd get, we'd let the ball players in free, and with them came the crowd, right? And you would charge, and we started making good money that way. But unintentionally, I started creating a ton of relationships with athletes, right? So I think that's kind of where those relationships started initially, and that kind of grew over the next couple of years as we were throwing events. And I graduated in 05, May of 05, and I took a couple of years off because we were doing so well with the events that I started a small marketing company here in Austin. I started doing different events from a marketing standpoint. Still was doing some events at night, but also was doing some small marketing. We did Monday Night Football for Dave & Buster's, a couple other events, right? And
what was the name of that marketing firm?
Making Moves.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called Making Moves.
I love hearing this.
Exactly, man. It's back in the day. Back in the day. So started doing some small marketing jobs around Austin, and we were still throwing the events at night. So money was flowing in. As far as we were concerned, right? We're 21-year-old kids making six figures, throwing events. We were doing pretty well back then, right? So took a couple of years off, so I probably took 2 years off, but then I started seeing a bunch of my buddies that were ball players starting to come back to Austin, and they were making a different type of money, right?
Okay.
They were really making money, right? So I started saying, like, man, we're doing well, but, got to be something else I could do. So, I picked it back up. I was like, you know what, I want to go to law school. I want to go ahead and go to law school and kind of chase that dream of being a corporate lawyer. So this was in 08, going into 08, or right 07, 08. So took the LSATs in December of 07 going into 08, I believe, and decided I want to go to law school. And at the same time, me and Jamal Charles had grown really close, and he was going to the NFL at the time. And I went to visit him while he was training for the draft, and met his agent there, Andrew Kessler, who ended up offering me an internship. Asked me what I was doing that summer before my first year of law school. Decided to do an internship with him, and the rest is kind of history.
And
kind of fell into it.
That's interesting, because I know Andrew as well, good people. With that internship, was that something that you actively sought, or was it just kind of presented to you out the blue? Yeah,
it was presented to me. Like I said, I went out to visit Jamal while he was training for the draft in Orange County, and that was probably sometime in January, February, because at the time, again, I was in between working and applying for law school. And when I was out there with Jamal, obviously met Andrew, developed a relationship with Andrew, and I think Andrew realized, man, you got a lot of relationships, on the football team there at Texas. And I guess he saw something in me as far as just the ability to relate to a lot of different type of people, and said, hey, this might be a field that might interest you. And again, he saw it in me before I saw it in myself, because I had no idea what he did or, what the field was about. So doing that initial internship was important. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. Didn't seek it out at all.
Okay. How long was that internship? About 6 months or?
No, it was like a 3-month internship, I want to say. It was probably like a 3-month internship. Went out to California and worked. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be the first time. As an intern, I had never been an intern. So I was used to throwing parties and events and making money, right? So I walk in there and they're like, hey, go print this for me. Go pick up this order. Go pick up some lunch for us. I'm like, this don't seem like, this is what being a sports agent is about. I don't really want to be a sports agent.
When do we actually start working?
Right? Yeah, exactly. But so did that for a few months, and, started law school that fall, and I decided, I kind of put it in the back burner, that's not something I'm gonna do. I just, again, didn't really get a great experience. The company was great, but as far as the work I was doing wasn't fulfilling, and just not something that I saw myself wanting to go back and do. So did my first year of law school, did my first year of law school. That summer after my first year of law school, took a bunch of extra classes, did a bunch of work, was trying to hurry up and get out of law school and graduate early. They asked me to come back, and I didn't that year. So, but going into my second year of law school, obviously would go to games, see Jamal play, kept developing a relationship with Andrew, and he's like, look, come back for an internship after your second year of law school. I'll make sure it's a better experience for you, that you get a lot more hands-on experience. So, I took him up on the offer. So that was, what was that? What year was that? It had to be 2010.
Okay.
Yeah, the summer of 2010. So I went back and did an internship there, and that's kind of where I fell in love with it, man. So it was an opportunity to kind of use my law degree, my love of numbers, and be able to stay involved in sports, which I loved my whole life, and obviously the game of football. So did the internship, went back to school, graduated early in 2.5. I graduated in December 2010 from law school. Okay. And then January of 2011, they offered me a full-time job and started at Athletes First. So I've been there 13 years as a in the agent role, and if you add the internship that I initially did, about 16 years kind of in the business now.
It's always interesting to hear these stories, because when you look at your numbers on paper and the amount of dollars you've negotiated, you would think you've been in this business a lot longer than you have. And I know when I first signed with you, that was back in 2013. Yeah. At the time, I didn't realize you was only 2 years.
Yeah, man. I was young.
Yeah, you was young. You was fresh.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, man. Those first, obviously, man, just like anything else, the first couple guys that believe in you, give you that opportunity is huge. You know what I mean? And, I never forgot that. So, all the guys that I dealt with when I first got in the business, I still deal with them to this day. As, me and you always talk. That first group of guys, whether it's Kenny Vaccaro, Marquise Goodwin, I still got a great relationship with your draft class, guys previous to you as well. So, yeah, man, it was fun, man. Those first couple of years were fun. You know what I mean? Yeah, I was just trying to figure it out.
Absolutely. Okay, so graduate around 2010, first get started 2011. Let's kind of go into who were your first few clients. So who was the guy that kind of popped it off for you? Who was your first ever client?
Man, my first client is, arguably, to me, and I'm biased, the best safety in the history of the game, right? Earl Thomas, who went to the University of Texas. Someone I met through my younger brother who also attended the University of Texas. And, Earl's the first person to give me an opportunity and say, hey, yo, I'm an elite level player. I can sign with literally any agent in the business. But, I trust you and I want to work with you. And, it's not bad when your first client is a Hall of Famer. In my mind, should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. So, yeah.
And just real quick, just kind of going over y'all's relationship. How did y'all get to know each other? He's a little bit younger than you. Where did that friendship, that trust come from?
Yeah, so I was still in Austin when he was coming in. That was kind of right before I left for law school. And him and my younger brother I'm not sure how they met, but they were friends because my younger brother and him were around the same age as far as at the university. And he would just be around. So I met him and another still good friend of mine, Jeremy Hills, who's also like a little brother to me, who's doing phenomenal things here in Austin. But met him and Jeremy. They were cool with my little brother. And, Earl was having some difficulty kind of with that transition from a small town, Orange, Texas, which is over by Beaumont and Port Arthur area, and just making that transition over. And, myself, just being kind of as a big brother mentor version to not only my little brother, but those two guys that had, we had become real close, just started giving him advice. And, he never lets me live it down. But at one point I had told him, like, look, man, maybe football's not for you.
You told that to...
I told Earl that. To Earl. We all make mistakes. Wait,
hold on. Earl was balling as a redshirted freshman. So when did you have this conversation?
It was a year before that, which was the redshirt year, right? It was more...
Yep.
Well, the reason was, again, he was having that tough transition. He'd always been a superstar. And Earl's not the biggest guy, right? He measured, I think he came in at 5'10" at the combine. Earl's probably more like 5'9", a half, 5'9".
I remember there's a funny story at the combine that he braided his dreads right down the middle so he could
push down on it.
So he could get an extra inch on his height.
There you go. But smaller guy, came into UT, had a couple safeties in front of him, and no disrespect to them, but it wasn't like guys that you thought were surefire NFL guys, right? And he wasn't able to get on the field his his freshman year in college. And at UT, they normally, whether it's on special teams, they're going to find a spot for you if you're a guy, right? Your freshman year. So that and the fact that, he's having some issues with grades, not because he wasn't bright, but just because he wasn't going to class. Because again, that transition coming from a small town, coming to UT, this bigger city, being around a bunch of people you don't know, and you're not playing football, now that's starting to wear on you. Grades were suffering a little bit. So I was like, man, you probably just need to lock in your school stuff, right? You don't want to get, you might get thrown out of school here, academically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it was like, let's lock in on that. And, so kind of have those conversations with him. Him and my younger brother ended up, Earl wanted to be pledged the fraternity I was in. And we had the conversation where if you can get your grades up, then, I'll make sure that, we'll help you get into the fraternity, right? So Earl ends up that summer taking summer school classes, and I think he got a 3.5 and a 3.7. I don't remember what but really boosted his GPA up significantly. And that next year, that spring is when he ended up, redshirt sophomore, spring game kind of took off, and became the, Earl Thomas that we know. But that first semester for him, and I'm not sure if he was an early enrollee or not, if they used to do that back then, I don't remember, but I know that first semester for him was really tough.
And how did the conversation of, would you potentially be my first client ever? Like, how did that come up? Like, were you nervous about that talk? Did he bring it to your attention?
It was organic, right? Because again, my initial relationship with him was not initial, but one of our, first conversation about football really was like, hey, maybe it's not for you. So I think with him, he never felt that it was like, oh, he's, this relationship is based on the fact that he thinks I can make it in the league, right? So it was just a real organic relationship originally. And then as I was going into, like I said, law school, I had put the agent stuff behind me after that first internship. So going into my second year of law school, I'm not even thinking about being an agent. We just have a real good relationship, and he's playing really well. They invite me back. I end up doing the internship, and then when I decided, hey, I think it's something I really want to do. Obviously, every time I'd go back to Austin and visit my brother or be around, he was there. He knew that's something I wanted to do, and kind of just told me like, yo, if there's something you want to do, and I'm here, I want to sign with you because I trust you at the end of the day. So for me, it was just like, okay, I felt I could handle it only because of the platform I had with Athletes First going into it. If I was on my own without, accompanying that platform, I probably wouldn't even taken him up on it because I wouldn't have felt like I could have handled a guy, you're talking about a top 15 pick who, every agent in the business that's been doing it for 20 years is recruiting. So, but because I had that platform, I had Andrew Kessler, who I leaned on a lot, and just kind of that support team around me. I was like, okay, I felt that, it made sense and it was something that we could do.
Is it safe for me to say that while you took Earl on as a client, that he kind of viewed you kind of like as a mentor at the time?
No, for sure.
Absolutely.
I think we had already developed that relationship, that mentor, big brother type of relationship, where he knew I was going to be honest with him, even if I was wrong sometimes. But yeah, I think he viewed it as more like, okay, this is somebody at the end of the day that I trust. I can take care of the football stuff. I feel confident about that, and just having somebody in my corner that I trust. And of course, again, he saw the platform as well. Athletes First represented a ton of elite, high-level guys. So it wasn't like, hey, come with me to, Joe Blow agency where, you're gonna be a test, what do you call it, a test dummy or whatever you call them.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that type of situation. So I think, and again, he trusted that I wouldn't put him in that type of situation. So, we had a really good platform, a really good agency, and then he had me there who he trusted. And Earl's the type of guy that he really has to grow. He's not a guy that's gonna walk in the door and trust you. You got to really develop that relationship. So, yeah, again, organically it worked out, and just like kind of my introduction to even the sports agent world is, none of it was purposeful, but like they say, man, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah. No, I love hearing how you navigated through relationships early on in your career and how you built trust with some of your early clients. Kind of transitioning into that, I think a lot of people think that with an agent, all you do is negotiate numbers, negotiate contracts, stuff like that. But realistically speaking, as a rookie coming into the league, most of that stuff is already slotted. So the bulk of your time, I'm assuming, is managing those relationships, mentoring those clients of yours. Can you kind of shed light on that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just real quick to touch on the contracts, when the CBA changed, a lot of that money that was going to rookies, unfortunately, was taken out of the rookie pool and put into veteran contracts and put into retirement. Because I tell people all the time, the guys that are making these decisions from the NFLPA, they're never going to be rookies again. They're in the league, right? So they know they're never going to see that rookie money again. So they decided a lot of that, they moved that money into the veteran pool and the retirement pool. So when that changed, I think, as an agent, obviously, you're still negotiating the contract. I say this all the time. If you take all the numbers out of an NFL contract and it's 10 pages long, you're still going to have 9 3/4 worth of words left, right? And words do matter. So there's a lot to negotiate on the rookie deals outside of just the dollar amount, right? Cash, when you get your signing bonus, your default language, there's a ton of stuff to go through. But that being said, you hit the nail right on the head, right? Regardless, even on veterans, to be honest with you, because once you do the contract, the contract is signed for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. So there's a lot to the agent-client relationship that's not football related, right? Because these athletes at the end of the day, they're still people. Football is part of what they do, but it's not who they are. You know what I mean? You got to just, as you get to know your client, the more you're around them, you start peeling back that layers. What makes them tick? What do they enjoy doing outside of football? What are their goals? What are their aspirations? What do they, where do they see themselves in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? So just having those conversations, and also, making sure that, they don't get lost in the sauce, right? The keeping up with the Joneses, this is what is expected of me as an athlete, right? And just trying to keep guys on the right track and kind of keep them focused. And, the goal for everybody is not, the first contract is exciting, but the goal is the second contract, right? That's a life-changing money. That's how you set yourself up generationally, your kids and your kids' kids. So yeah, for sure. There's a lot of mentorship. There's a lot of long conversations. There's a lot of, feeling like you're preaching to your clients at times, but, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. And when current athletes ask me now, like, what do you look for in an agent, or what should I look for in an agent? To me, it's that piece right there. Because that's what I know with working with you is the way you handle relationships, the way you mentor your clients. So I tell these current players, get you a guy that you can talk to on the daily basis. Get you a guy that's going to pick up the phone no matter what time of day it is. And I tell them that because early in my career, and you know this, I was very immature. I drank very irresponsibly. I partied a lot. Have a good time. Yeah, I like to have a good time back in the day. Yeah. And it led to a lot of stupid decisions that set my career back early on. Luckily, I was able to navigate through that and overcome that and had a great career. But I credit you for helping me grow up really quickly and kind of leaning on you. Every time I needed to call you, you picked up the phone, whether you wanted to or not. So basically, I just want to say thank you for that, and just letting these players know that you need to get you an agent like that. Like, I think that piece right there was more important for me than any negotiating you ever did for me.
I appreciate that. It means a lot, obviously. Like I said, you being one of my initial guys, and, that means a ton. But, I remember the, 2, 3 a.m. phone calls, the swimming pool incident. And So, I remember it, man. But again, like I tell people all the time, man, people ask me when I'm recruiting, what am I looking for? And I always tell guys, man, the last thing I want to do is recruit my own headache. And what I mean by that is not that guys aren't going to make mistakes, that you're not going to have to help guys through kind of that growing up process, but you just want to work with people that you enjoy talking to, that you like, that there's a mutual respect there, right? Because at the end of the day, I do work for my clients, but I do want my clients to feel like, man, I'm lucky to work with David as well, right? Obviously, I'm blessed to get the opportunity, but I hope that I bring enough to the table where there's a mutual respect there. And as long as that's there, then for me, it's worth it. I like I like working with guys that I like, dealing with. As you say, every time your phone rings, and it rings a lot as an agent. The last thing you want to do is like, oh man, I got to talk to this guy again, right? And it goes same back and forth with a player, right? Last thing you want to do as a player is, your agent calls you and be like, man, I got to talk to this guy again. True. So I think that part is super important. Like you just said, man, getting somebody that you can talk to, getting somebody that you trust, getting somebody that you know is not going to always tell you what you want to hear. We've had some, tough conversations about, things that are going on. So I think for me, that's another one of the things that I think separates me from a lot of other agents is you get kind of the best of both worlds. You get somebody who's relatable, that you can talk to, that you can deal with, that you trust, that you know is going to have those tough conversations with you. But at the same time, from a credibility standpoint, you don't want to, put too much weight on the relatability where you're not getting the business taken care of, right? So you want somebody who's been able to negotiate contracts at a high level, has dealt with all teams, has seen every situation that you might go through and be able to help you through that. So I think with me, you get that balance of that, you get both relatability plus your credibility part of it.
Okay, so earlier in the interview, you said you don't ever want to recruit your own headache, and you kind of gave insight on what you look for within like a recruit or a client. I guess vice versa to that, has there ever been a situation where you've had to drop a client?
Oh, man, it's funny you asked that. I've had to drop one client, and obviously I won't put a name on it. But for me, there's a level of respect that has to exist, right? At the end of the day, I got to wake up in the morning, look myself in the mirror, and there's no amount of money that, is going to allow for me to feel like I'm being disrespected or somebody doesn't value me, right? And we all want to be valued, right? And if I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, I want to make sure that whoever I'm working with values that. So I had a situation where, a client, phenomenal football player, phenomenal player. And honestly, if you were building a team, you'd want this player on your team, right? If you had 11 of him, he works hard, he wants to win, he lives in the weight room, but just had a super, super chip on his shoulder at all times that he just couldn't, remove. And, we have tough conversations, which I can get over that. But, there's some conversations that were had with my staff and kind of the people I work with, which to me, they're family, right? I've been with them for, at this point, 15 plus years. The people that I work with, I consider family. So there was just at some point it gets to a level of disrespect where you're like, look, man, there's no amount of money that makes this okay. So I definitely did have to part ways with that client. Interestingly enough, the client, I guess, I don't think we were together probably 4 or 5 months. But we, ended up talking again, and he reached back out, and, I took him back on, you know what I mean? I think there was kind of that understanding that, okay, maybe I did overstep. Maybe there were some things that I shouldn't have done. And again, for me, I'm always willing to give a second chance, right? But so he ended up coming back, and I still work with him till this day. And again, like I said, from a football standpoint, this is the type of guy you want. One of the hardest working guys I've ever seen. But again, I think there had to be that understanding that, look, man, there's no amount of money that's going to make some of the things that have happened okay. So we need to address those. And, again, I think my staff looked at me differently. Like, okay, he's going to stand up for us. I think my other clients even reached out like, hey, man, for you to kind of terminate that relationship, knowing, that there's a lot of money at risk, and, that didn't really move the boat for you. I think, there was a level of respect to earn from other clients. And for me, it was important just to show, like, look, at the end of the day, I do work for my clients, but there's going to have to be a mutual level of respect.
Yeah, and I think as athletes, some guys get in trouble with, as an athlete, we have so many people that do things for us, that work for us, essentially, whether it's bodywork people, whether it's the trainers, whether it's the coaches, whatever it is, there's people that work for us, and we view it as that. I think athletes get in trouble by viewing their agent as another person that just strictly works for him.
Yeah.
Like it's a business partnership, and the respect has to be there. So
and I think that should be the case with whoever you work with, right?
Absolutely.
Even trainers and the staff and whoever else it is. There's an understanding that now you got to hold them accountable. I believe firmly in that, right? You got to hold everybody accountable for what they're supposed to be doing. So if I have an agent, he's not answering my phone call, he's not doing things that I've hired him to do, then those tough conversations need to happen, right? If you have a bodywork guy and he's showing up late and he's, you feel like he's half-assing the job, then those conversations. But I think there's the difference between holding people accountable, which we all need, and feeling as though somebody is, hey, he just works for me. That's, he's below me or whatever it may be, right? It's not servitude, you know what I mean? So I definitely think there's a difference between the two.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way of putting it. So like you just said, there's been situations where you've had to drop a client. For the people out there that aren't familiar, you represent Deshaun Watson as well. In a situation where an athlete gets himself into legal trouble, how do you navigate whether to stand with them in that situation and lead them through this and help build them up, or drop them in a situation like a Johnny Manziel or a Michael Vick? How do you decipher between those two scenarios?
Yeah, I think for Deshaun, for me, I've always held back that, kind of what you've heard in the media and so forth that went on. You know how it is in the media, man. It's clickbait. So really knowing what was going on with Deshaun and what the circumstances were, there was no way I would have ever dropped him. You know what I mean? Deshaun is one of the one of the best people that I've ever met, just being candid. I've been asked the question like, hey man, if you had to leave your kids with somebody for them to babysit them, who would you, which one of your clients would you, leave them with? Kind of like, hey, if you were in an alley with a client, who would you have with you? I've had it the other way. And Deshaun is definitely top, he's in that top 5 list. If I had, somebody needed to babysit my kids, okay, yeah, I could leave them with him, I think, again, just like anybody growing up, sometimes you put yourself in situations you shouldn't be in. But from a standpoint of dropping him, I mean, like I said, man, as a person, as a player, whatever you can ask for. I mean, Deshaun's one of the greatest people I know. But it never crossed my mind. You know what I mean? It never crossed my mind to do so. He kind of, to be honest with you, Deshaun, I would say changed my life. Outside of maybe a Jamal Charles who introduced me into the business, Earl Thomas who was my first client. Deshaun's right up there with kind of those life-changing moments in the business. As a black agent, you really don't get those opportunities, or historically, we didn't get opportunities to represent, high-level quarterbacks. That was kind of reserved for, white agents and, older agents. But him coming off a national championship, being, in my eyes, was the best player in college football, as he showed against Alabama in that national championship, and then allowing me, an agent who never had a quarterback drafted, and gave me the opportunity to represent him when, again, he could have chose anybody to work with him, and he gave me that opportunity. So I'll forever be grateful to him. And yeah, it never crossed my mind to drop Deshaun. And I'm happy that again, obviously he had to go through a lot, but in the end, I'm happy he's in a good situation. He's financially secure, and I think he's going to have a really good season this year.
So for you, in a situation like that, how is it standing side by side, 10 toes down with a client, when the public perception isn't quite what you know? Because obviously you know a lot more about the situation than everybody else, and everybody else has their critiques and opinions out there. But with you standing tall with Deshaun, and maybe people around you looking at you sideways a little bit, how did you navigate through that?
To be honest, the people that are around me know Deshaun too, right?
Okay.
See what I'm saying? Yep. So it was never nobody, in our circle, nobody at the agency, nobody that, again, I always tell people this: if you interviewed 100 people that knew Deshaun before this situation, that had been around him, not one of them ever changed their mind on who Deshaun was, right? If there's nobody that can say something negative about Deshaun that, again, that has spent time with him, that knows his character. Again, I don't want to get into, kind of the meat and potatoes of the situation, because again, I'm not trying to, there's no point in, rehashing that. But like I said, there's nobody who knows Deshaun, who's been around Deshaun, that would ever say, anything negative about him. So for the inner circle or the group around us, it was never a problem. From a media standpoint, from, kind of public outrage, whatever it may be that came along with some of the the clickbait stuff that was put out there that wasn't true. To me, at the end of the day, it's just like any other member of your family. You know who they are. You're gonna stand by them. You don't just get to stand by your guys and take pictures during the good times, right? You want to, don't just be there when they're getting a Super Bowl trophy or the MVP trophy or it's contract signing time. It's gonna be times where you're gonna have to stand there and it's raining. You know what I mean? And we're gonna both get rained on. You know what I mean? You deal with it and you push through. But it was never a situation where nothing ever changed in my thought process or how I dealt with Deshaun or how I deal with him now or any of that, right? Because we all know who he is and the type of guy he is.
I had a question for you saying who, in your opinion, is probably the most impactful client on your career? And you kind of already answered that with Deshaun. I think it's interesting to say that he kind of spearheaded you into the QB market because after Deshaun came Justin Fields, then came Jordan Love, then CJ Stroud. Like you said, as an agent, you want to represent quarterbacks. That's where the money's at. That's the face of a franchise. Just kind of speak on how Deshaun helped you break that barrier a little bit.
Yeah. And Malik Willis is another one.
Malik Willis as well. I know I was missing somebody.
But like I said, just historically, right? We're kind of been taught to think that you need a certain type of agent to get you what you want, right? And that was kind of what was going on. And African-American quarterbacks just aren't really getting the opportunity to really represent these high-level quarterbacks. And for Deshaun to kind of say, you know what, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm not really worried about what's happened historically. And give a young agent at the time, I was a lot younger, that opportunity, I think, spoke volumes on his character and his belief in himself and his own skill set. And all we need is opportunity at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, you can't show that you can represent quarterbacks unless you get a quarterback to represent, right? It's, what came first, the chicken or the egg type of argument. So he gave me the opportunity, and once we were able to show, that we were able to do good work with Deshaun, obviously, like you said, ended up representing a lot of other elite level quarterbacks from, Justin Fields, CJ Stroud, the Jordan Loves, and Malik, whoever you want to throw out there. So been super blessed, and I would say, that was one of the most impactful things on my career for sure, behind or right on the same level as, Earl Thomas giving me the opportunity initially coming out as a first round pick. I would probably say if I had, two moments that might have been the most impactful, those would be right up there for sure. Okay,
so with NIL kind of shifting the college landscape a little bit, it allows agents to recruit a lot younger, right? How has that affected you and your philosophy when it comes to signing clients? Like, do you start at the high school level now? Is there, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I think NIL has created some interesting opportunities, I would say, right? You're starting to deal with these young athletes a lot younger than you normally would have. When I first got in the business, you couldn't even start recruiting players until they were 3 years removed from high school. So they had to be pretty much draft eligible, either redshirt sophomores, the end of their redshirt sophomore years or junior years. That's when you could really recruit guys. But now it's shifted all the way to, you can sign guys in certain states in elementary if you really wanted to, right, for NIL purposes. So I think it just creates a much longer runway for you to have, for you to represent these players, get to know them and their families. I just think the runway's a lot longer before they enter into the NFL. And it used to be before you would think before they entered into making money, but because now they can make money in college and honestly even in high school. I think those opportunities are much different than they were when you were around. So NIL, I think it's the greatest thing that ever happened to non-professional sports. These kids that are creating so much revenue for whether it be colleges or broadcasters or whatever else it may be, I think are now starting to be able to get a piece of that pie. And right now it's NIL, but as you've seen, it's going to be TV revenue soon, and it's going to be the model's going to look a lot more like the NFL than what college football used to look like.
Okay, so with you having access to guys a lot younger, when do you make that decision on when should I contact a guy? Like, do you have to start contacting everybody in high school, or do you kind of pick and choose and cherry pick which guys you kind of want to go after at the high school level?
I think it's just the same as you do in college, right? Okay. If you see somebody who you think you can help, right? If I feel like there's a young student athlete that I can add value to, or I can, there's some benefit for us to work together, and they kind of meet the rest of your criteria, the same that you would for a college player or NFL player, then that's who you go after, and you recruit them, and you treat them. You got to treat these guys as professionals at this point because they're making money, so they are, in a sense, they are professionals, right? It's just understanding at a certain age. There's obviously things that are going to be brand new to them. There's going to be things that they haven't experienced. So there's a different level of education at each level, right? If you're a high school player to a college player to an NFL player, everybody's always learning. Everybody's always growing. So just different levels of kind of what you're making sure you educate guys on, what, the different things you try to put in front of them and expose them to. So for us, I think it's like when you're in high school, hey, what can we do to help you become a successful college player, right? And when you're a college player, what can we do to help you become a successful NFL player, right? Not only, hey, what NIL deals can we help you get, is how do we help you with, those transitions to the next level and make sure that you're prepared and ready at that point.
Okay, so I think the $1 million question is, and you can answer this any way you want to, what is the recruiting pitch? As the best agent in the NFL, what's the pitch?
Man, honestly, I don't think there's a better recruiting pitch than, honestly, what you just said about me, right? Having your clients and the people that you've worked with. Because at the end of the day, there's no better predictor of the future than the past, right? Is the way I look at it. So if you're wondering what somebody's going to do for you, how they're going to treat you, how they negotiate contracts, the results they get, I think, the easiest way is to kind of look behind them and see what they've done for other guys that are similarly situated as you. So for me, man, I'm really big on talk to my past clients, talk to their families, and kind of what my resume is. Because you can sit down in front of anybody and they can tell you, anything. I can tell you I run a 4.3 until I got to go out there and do it, right? And I run a 6.9, but a 6.8, whatever it is. But my point is, I think for me, having guys like you who, I have that track record with, having guys like even a Jeremy Hills who, came out of college and, took his shot at the NFL, didn't work out for him. But, till this day, I still, deal with Jeremy. We have businesses together. There's things that we do together. I have a few clients of mine who are no longer in the NFL that I'm still in business with, that we do, we have certain opportunities that we still take advantage of. So for me, I think that's the biggest thing, word of mouth. I think that's huge.
Okay. So football and basketball probably are my two favorite sports. Okay. What I love about basketball is the guaranteed contracts, which give them leverage. As a football player, we get a certain amount of guaranteed money, and the rest is whatever the owners want to do with that leftover money on our contract. But that holds us back because in situations where we need to hold out and get a better deal, we don't have that type of leverage. So I remember a situation with Jalen Ramsey. Like, these situations are so few and far between. I remember Jalen Ramsey, and I think I might have remembered Darrelle Revis. They're the only two players in my mind that I can remember ever winning a contract dispute, winning a contract holdout. In your opinion, what's the best piece of advice to players when holding out? How do you successfully win a contract holdout?
First thing I'll say is players have a lot more leverage than they think, right? You just have to know how to use your leverage. You got to understand who you're dealing with. But what I would say to players is, first, you have to be reasonable in your demands, right? If you're holding out and you're being unreasonable with what you're demanding, the team is in a situation where it's a lose-lose, right? Either we pay him this and it just doesn't make sense, or we give into what these demands are and it doesn't make sense, or the player is unhappy, or the player doesn't play, and it gets to a point where it's like, well, under these circumstances, we'd rather just not have him here, right? So you got to do your best to try to create a win-win. Regardless if you're winning a little more, you still got to give the team a situation where they feel like they're winning as well, and you got to be resolute in whatever you're deciding, right? You can't show weakness. If you decide, I'm not going to play, or I'm going to hold out, or I'm going to do this, if the team doesn't believe you, it doesn't really matter, right? So you got to put yourself in a position where the team believes whatever it is you're saying you're going to do, you're going to do. And again, I think that kind of comes with your track record, right? As a player, teams know the guys that can really go through that, because it's tough now. When you decide not to show up, or you decide you're going to hold out, or you're going to push for this or that, fans are fans of the team for the most part, right? So you're going to instantly become the bad guy. So as long as you understand what's coming with what you're about to do, and you're okay with that, and you're a type of player that can deal with that, then I think you just have to be resolute in your stance. And there's always a win. You know, you just got to figure out how to get to it.
So you got to commit to the holdout.
You got to commit to whatever you're doing in life. You know what I mean? You can't half-ass anything in life and think you're going to get results. There's no reason that, you know, to work in holdouts either.
I've never held out, so I don't know how this works. But how does the fine process work? Because you always hear guys holding out in camp, they get fined X amount of dollars every single day. I'm sure they're not making those payments daily. So is that, like, what does the fine system look like when guys are holding out?
I like to say, first off, my guys, we've never missed a check. You know what I mean? So we found ways to you know, get our point across, you know, maybe not be on the field, not show up, but we've never missed a check, right? So you got to understand the system. That being said, if you make that conscious decision that you're going to get fined and you're okay with it, on your rookie deals, you know, the team still have the opportunity to forgive some of those fines. When you're a veteran, you know, you're going to have to eat, you know, those fines, right? So they take it, you know, I've never had a guy have to pay them, so I'm not sure exactly they come out. You know, they take them out of your paycheck. You cut a check. I'm not sure exactly how that works.
That's a good point, because when I look back at the Jalen Ramsey situation, he was always in the building, right? So he never
didn't hold out, man. He had a bad back.
Okay,
fair enough. Bad back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, read the tea leaves. No doubt. All right, David. Last question. In your opinion, who's on your Mount Rushmore of NFL agents? Like, I'm gonna put you in there. Consider you the best in the game, so you already got a spot on there. Man, give me three more.
Okay. I'm happy you said it and I did. Right? I'm happy you said it and I did. Yeah. That's tough, man. That's tough. I'm a little biased. I got guys that work with me that I think are phenomenal. So if I had to put my Mount Rushmore together, I'm gonna name my.
Well, let's do this then.
Okay.
So let me make this a little cleaner for you.
Okay.
Leave out everybody that's a part of athletes first.
Okay, got you. So no, I can't name my A1 guys who I think are the best of the best. But Ben Dogra would be one of the guys, and Ben Dogra was an NFL agent that was really, man, super successful. Had a lot of UT guys actually. The Roy Williams. I think he had Michael Huff and Michael Griffin, all those guys when they were coming out. But Ben Dogra was a guy that could recruit any and everybody. There was nobody he couldn't recruit. You know what I mean? He could recruit, you know, black players, white players, Polynesian players. I mean, you know, big guys, little guys, fast guys, slow guys, whatever it was. And you know, I've said this before. I would have paid to sit into a Ben Dogra meeting. You know, because for a guy, you know, again, he was a short, chubby guy. I don't think he'd ever played any sports. I don't think he was born in the U.S. And to be able to kind of just relate and get people to trust him. And he did a good job as well. So I think Ben Dogra would be up there. I think you got to look at a guy like Scott Boras and what he's done in baseball. I mean, he's pretty much, you know, single-handedly, you know, kind of changed the game and what players get paid. So I think, you know, Scott Boras has done a phenomenal job with what he's done. Man, who would be my next one?
Let's go with Kesh. What about a guy like Andrew Kessler that kind of helped get your career off the ground? What does he mean to you?
Oh, you want to let me throw A1 guy in there? Okay,
I'll let you throw him in there.
Okay, let me throw him in there. Again, for the record, I think all our agents at A1 are phenomenal and the best of the best. But Andrew, I mean, for me, again, going back to impact, he arguably had the biggest impact on my career because he gave me the opportunity. He introduced me into the world of what being a sports agent was. So I think, you know, with Andrew, he's a phenomenal agent. You know, he's one of those guys where if he's on your team, he's a pit bull. You know what I mean? He's going to fight for every dollar. He's going to fight for, you know, he'll negotiate your house purchase, you know what I mean, your car purchase, whatever you need negotiated. He's going to be there like a pit bull ready to do it. And just super loyal to his guys. I've seen the way, and I kind of got this from him, you know, just the way he still deals with guys that are retired. You know, any one of Kess's guys that are retired, he still deals with them as if they were still playing. And that's something I really, again, you know, I grew up with that sense of loyalty as well, but just seeing, you know, him in the business kind of holding on to that and doing things that I've seen. You know, I've seen a lot of other players in the league retire and they stop talking to their agents, or their agents stop answering their phone calls, and they're no longer paying bills. You know, I won't say any names, but I mean, I got guys here at UT that reach out to me that I didn't represent. They're like, hey, man, you know, we got some stuff post-career going on. Can I get your advice? Can you help me? I've had guys reach out, hey, can you give me tickets to this game? You know, guys that played for an NFL team that can't get in contact with somebody, and they reach out to me even though I didn't represent them when they were players, just because they don't have that relationship anymore with their agent. So I say all that to say, no, yeah, Andrew, again, I think, you know, he does a phenomenal job in the industry, and he, you know, he's somebody that I definitely have modeled some of my career after.
Well, David, man, I appreciate you taking the time today.
No, for sure. I appreciate you having me.
This was one of our best interviews. It's going to be exciting to release this one.
No doubt, man. I want to say, man, obviously, like I said before, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. At the time, you didn't have to. I was a lot younger and not as experienced as, I'm sure many people that are calling your phone. So I appreciate that. And just watching you kind of evolve from the young kid who, like we said earlier, like to enjoy himself, to, watching you now, play a successful, long career in the NFL, everything you're doing off the field right now, watched you get married, was there when you got married, and, you obviously have a beautiful wife and everything you have going on, man. So I'm just super proud of you, man. Can't wait to see, what's next for you.
Absolutely.
No doubt, man. For sure, boss, man.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
It's another episode of Behind the Face Mask.